Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to day 16 of Bookmas. This was one of the days that I put question marks on my announcement video of what it was going to be. I talked briefly about maybe doing a tour of my new board because I'm very excited to play that. But I wanted to kind of review all of our goals from last year. I wanted to quickly go over the 11 nonfiction books that I read this year. So my goal was to read 6. I surpassed that. I'm not a huge nonfiction reader. I don't typically tend to pick it up. But when I do pick it up, I absolutely love it. So I really want to continue with my reading of nonfiction next year. But I thought it would just be fun to kind of look over the 11 books that I did read for nonfiction books this year. I do not rate my nonfiction books at all. Ever. So we're just gonna talk about it, I guess. The first, I think that they're in order of when I read them. I know the first book on this list was the first book that I read in 2021, so I know it's correct. And that is The History of Food in 101 Objects by Media Lab Books. And that is exactly what it sounds like. It's pictures of 101 different objects, and they tell you how, like, when it was invented, why it was invented, and how it kind of changed from what it was first used for to now, how we use it. It was interesting. I enjoyed it. I did find it very kind of dull and like very info. It was just like it info dumped everything on me, but I think that's kind of what you expect from that kind of book. This one I almost rated, but it's nonfiction, and I really don't like reading nonfiction because I feel like, how can you rate the truth? Like, just because my life, if I were to write a book about my life, if my life to you was boring, but it's my life, how can you criticize my life and tell me that I've had a boring life, or that, okay, if I were to write a book about myself, I would probably write about cancer, and I would write about all these other health things that came because of it. And my biggest dream, my biggest want in life is to be a mom. And I know there's adoption, and there are things, there are ways to have kids around not being able to have a child yourself. But it's always been my dream. Even when I was a kid myself, I'm like, oh, someday I'm going to be a mom. And it's like, to me, it's devastating that it's very likely I can't. And it's because of some of the things that happened as a kid for me. But if I wrote about how devastating it was, and like I said that it was like a very hard-hitting subject or whatever, and say you read it and you're like, oh, well, so what? You can't have kids. It's not like the end of the world. Maybe not for you, but maybe for someone in my shoes, maybe it feels like the end of the world sometimes. And so that's how I feel reading nonfiction. I'm just like, how can I tell you that your life was boring, or that the way you wrote this book or researched this book didn't work for me? It's nonfiction. It's true. So I personally don't rate nonfiction ever. But for this one really spoke to my soul. It broke my heart, and I almost rated it, but I'm like, no, it's nonfiction, I can't read it. And that is Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You by Jason Reynolds. This one really hit home for me because of the world we live in right now, and I picked this book up. I found it at the thrift store, and it just really resonated with me because of the world we live in. And it was heartbreaking and emotional and a great read. I read a self-help book. I used to read a lot of self-help books, but in the more recent years, I haven't picked them up as much. So I read Girl, Wash Your Face, Stop Believing the Lies About Who You Are So You Can Become Who You Were Meant to Be by Rachel Hollis. That was a very long title. And I have since heard some very problematic things about this author, and I no longer support this author. So if you want to know more about that, go check Google. I'm not going to do that here. But she's not. I don't recommend her books. At first, when I first read it, I really, really loved it. I cried. I was very emotional. It was a good self-help book. But adding her character into this book, I'm trying really hard not to read problematic authors. I'm not going to go out of my way to research every single author, though. So if I have one on my shelf, you can kindly let me know, or, just let it go. But if something really bothers me about an author, if I hear or see something myself about an author, then, those authors will not be shown here anymore. Like Harry Potter. I've never finished it because I was doing a read-through and watching the movies with my husband, and then that author that shall not be named did some very, very mean things and said some things that she just can't take back, and I do not agree with her at all. And if you're gonna be the type of person that spreads hate and things like that, and you're an author that I know, I'm going to unhaul all of your stuff. I'm not going to read your books anymore. She just happens to be one. Rachel Hollis is now another one that I will never read, even though this book was really good. Cake Wrecks, When Professional Cakes Go Hilariously Wrong by Jen Yates. I did this mystery book reading vlog where I grabbed 2 books that were wrapped, and they said, it said some stuff about it, and I read them. One of the books was this Cake Wreck book. All it said was nonfiction on it. I honestly thought it was fine. Like, it's perfectly fine, but those are the kind of things that I can just go to Google and be like, Cake Wrecks, or even YouTube, be like, Cake Wrecks, and then I can just watch like a montage of them. I personally would not spend my money on that book. Dogs 24/7, Extraordinary Photographs of Wonderful Dogs. So, am I cheating because it really was mostly a picture book of dogs? Is that cheating? Maybe slightly. But there were, like, pages of words. Pages of words. There were words all, in all of the book. You had to read all the captions of the pictures, and some of the book was literally just words. I really enjoyed it, but I like anything that has to do with dogs. Then the next one is Heaven is for Real, A Little Boy's Astonishing Story of His Trip to Heaven and Back by Todd Burpo. I could tell that this was written by someone who's not a writer. The writing wasn't the best. It was very slow and kind of mediocre in the writing, but the actual experience is something that I connect on a whole different level than a lot of people. I'm not going to get really into it very much, but we have something deeply in common, and I really enjoyed reading about our common experience. The next one is Yes Please by Amy Poehler. Amy Poehler is a comedian and actress. She plays on SNL, which I actually don't watch, but she wrote kind of like a memoir about herself, so you get a lot of her stories, and I really enjoy these kind of books, which is weird, but she's very funny and snarky in her writing, just as she would be on stage, and she talks about Hollywood, and not in like a very bad way, but just in a, everyone says Hollywood is so good, it's so great, but what's great about it? And then she lists all these things that happened to her in Hollywood, or, you know, because of Hollywood, and I just found it very relatable, and I really, really enjoyed it. I'm sorry if you can hear that. I'm very, very sorry. Okay, the next one is Sex Object, a memoir by Jessica Valentini. So this book follows this journalist who talks about sexism and about just about the different kinds of sexism that women have to go through, because like the man is always going to make more at the same job. Even if you're at the same job, you get hired at the same time, generally speaking, the man makes more. And why is that? And she just kind of dives into a lot of societal problems with sexism and feminism, and it was very intriguing. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. It was okay. I wanted it to kind of move me more than it did, and it just did it okay. Then I read Capone, Life Behind Bars at Alcatraz by Mark Douglas Brown, which was a graphic novel about Al Capone. It was fine. If you want to learn more about Al Capone, it's a very quick read. Then I read Meet the Characters, the Disney's Who's Who, and I don't know, for some reason going into this book, I thought it was going to be very impactful and it was going to hit me, but it literally was just a chart on each page of this character, and then it had their name, the movie they were in, and then a little tidbit about them. If you are a Disney fanatic, if you love Disney, then you already know all of this information, so it was kind of lackluster for me. Our last nonfiction that I read this year, I read The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Amy Schwimmer, and yet again, it's just another celebrity. It's another celebrity memoir type thing. Some things that really stayed with me for her is that she is not your size 0 model actress, but she is a comedian and an actress, and she looks like curvy, okay? She's curvy. She shows what I'm curvy, So I really love the representation that it's okay if you're not a size 0. That it's okay to be curvy or bigger. And that took her a long time to really discover, and it really just hit me because that's something that I've struggled with my entire life. I'm a lot better at it than I used to be. I mean, I still have those days or those moments where I'm like, ugh, I'm so ugly or I'm so big. I think that we all kind of have those times, but in general, I'm a lot better than I used to be about that, and my self-confidence is a lot more. But it just really hit me because, like, you know, I don't even think of Amy Schwimmer. Like, when I think of Amy Schwimmer, I don't think of, oh, she's a curvy girl or she's a big girl. I think of she's a funny comedian and she's a funny actress that I like to watch. And then another thing that she brought up, I mean, you get a lot of stories about her life and everything like that. But one thing that really stood out to me besides the curvy girl thing, being bigger in Hollywood, and just learning to have self-confidence in yourself and things like that. The other thing was that she starred in the Trainwreck, I believe that's the movie, which I absolutely loved that movie. But when it first came out, I don't know if you know this or remember this, but in Louisiana, there was a shooting during, I think it might have been the premiere of Trainwreck, the movie, and it was later found out that the person that did it was saying that the type of people that would go see Amy Schwimmer's movie, or this movie in particular, deserved to die. I think that 2 people were killed and then the perpetrator committed suicide, so 3 people total. And I never really thought about, like, what that would do to the actress or the director, anyone that was behind the making of that movie. And she touched on that a lot. She said that she still holds guilt. I mean, obviously it wasn't her fault, but it was something that took her a long time, and that she almost thought about, like, quitting her career because of that incident. And it really just, it stuck with me the way she wrote about it, and it kind of gave me a little bit of chills, because I heard about this mass shooting when that movie came out, but I didn't really, I don't know, I didn't correlate it to anything, you know, like it wasn't something that touched really close to my heart, because it just wasn't. It was sad, and I felt sadness for the victims and their families, but it wasn't something that, like, touched me personally. But I never thought of it as, like, oh, well, I created this movie, or I'm the actress in that movie and it was because of me, or, you know, I mean, we all have that kind of perception sometimes. And it was something that she really talked about, how she dealt with that. And I've never been through anything exactly like that, but I did have a lot of guilt for things that I later found out were not my fault, but I held that guilt for a very, very long time. And so I felt like we connected on that level too. So yeah, she is funny, and she's a great comedian, she's a good actress, and I very much like Amy Schwimmer, at least what I know of her. But reading her book also made me just, I feel like, let's see, how do I say this? Okay, I feel like a lot of people kind of see famous people and kind of just are like, oh, they're famous, you know, like, they're never, you know, they kind of unhumanize them, if that's a thing, where they're just like, oh, they're famous, they don't count as people, or things of that nature. And I'm just like, sometimes I wonder if I do that a little bit. I'm like, oh, they're famous, so they don't know what a struggle is, or they don't know, you know, what's like to wonder if you're gonna eat dinner the next night, or if you can afford to pay all your bills this month. Like, they don't have to wonder that kind of thing because they're movie stars, they're famous, they're, you know. But reading their like memoirs and their biographies and about them kind of makes me humanize them even more. Like, it puts the human element back into these famous people. I have no idea if that makes sense or not. And it could be completely weird too, but that's how I feel. And I'm gonna say this last book because I don't think I talked about it. If I did, then Alita, you can edit this whole thing out. You're welcome. But Talking as Fast as You Can by Lauren Graham. So she starred in Gilmore Girls, which is one of the best shows ever. She was the mom. And again, she's a very funny lady. And she talks a lot about Gilmore Girls and parenthood, and Gilmore Girls 2 when they came back for the Netflix show afterward, and meeting her husband, and you know, just it was really enjoyable. I don't remember a whole bunch of hard-hitting stuff. I do remember she talked about Hollywood and how that affected her and that kind of thing, but I just thought that it was very enjoyable. And then I also read Paperbacks from Hell. I read that in a reading vlog of reading Adam Caesar's recommendations. I will link that video up here. I had so much fun making that video, and I really want to do more vlogs like that in 2022. I have a lot of ideas and I cannot wait to do them. But Paperbacks from Hell is a book by Grady Hendrix, who is a horror author, and I have read a few books by him. I like his stuff. So Paperbacks from Hell is a nonfiction about different horror tropes that we see in horror literature, like the cursed child, when supernatural things, it's been a while, slashers, things of that nature. And it gives you like history upon when it started, what was the first book that had that specific kind of trope in it, and how has that trope evolved to today. And I honestly just really enjoyed it. If you want some good book recommendations for, especially if you like reading horror a lot, which I do, but I'm still very new to the genre, I would highly recommend it. It was pretty entertaining, actually. Those are all the nonfiction books I read in 2021. I think it's 10. It could be 11. Maybe I'll put it up there somewhere. We'll see. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you're new around here and you don't want to miss a single bookish video.